Hey folks, it's Brian. We've got an Elderath campaign update, session review number 92. So this is after the 19 melee rounds battling demons. Runt finds a tooth and discovers one of his molars is missing. He starts to freak out. Okay, next day Wes fixes the sign, sets it up, and he changes it from warning Bridge of Monster Summoning to warning Bridge of Demon Summoning. And then we continue south. Oh, which reminds me, I do have a live play. It's in the description. If you want to let me know how this new version of screen capture works or not. Okay. So we're moving south. We cross the river at a ford when Runt spies a log. But it's not a log! Turns out to be Sam, the Black Dragon. He says, "You are no longer in Kars. You have been elsewhere." And then Runt asks him, "Sam, what is your take on the multiverse? Where did you hear such words?" That kind of stuff, things going on. Okay, so there are reflections of all things. And Runt says, including you, he says, well, there are some things that are singular. He says, well, then they're not all reflections of all things, are there? But we explain that we got here, or he explains that we got here by walking a very painful golden thread. He says, oh, aren't you special? And Sam's asking, why are you here? Specifically, crossing the river at this time and place. But there's also, why are you here, like on Elderath at all? So Wes tells him that, we are here to stop an event in the Great Battle. He says, and which great battle is that? And so there's some sidebar stuff going on because Wes couldn't remember or I couldn't remember anything specific on how it was addressed on, who do you fight for? Well, we fight for Maliki, but Wes is kind of hesitant to speak her name out loud in this context, based upon when he tried to look like her and it didn't work. There was a backlash on that. But the big story is the Empress was defeated by Maliki's grandfather. And there were rises and there were falls. And there was the last battle, which is called the War of Dominion, from which we get the Circles of Stolth. So, Wes's intent to convey to Sam is that we are on the side of Maliki. And then he gets back to, okay, then what are you doing here? Playing right now, with Raymond's mission thing. Somewhere in there we talked about the demons and the ways and that kind of stuff. And Sam says, let me get some things straight for you. Traveling the ways can get the attention of those things. They are corruptions. So you have come a long way. And Wes says, not far enough. We have not yet accessed the deep magics or the deep knowledge. And he kind of, was thinking about stuff and goes, okay, if I were to offer you any assistance on your journey, what would facilitate your progress further? And then Runt starts going off on the flying ship thing. And I want to say somebody else started talking about some other stuff about, physical sort of stuff here, right? Wes then, gives a chance to speak. He says, hey, my friends here are too focused on the physicality of our situation. What we really need to understand is the cyclical nature of time and the singleness of all things. And Sam tells us, the ancients discovered and were able to fashion their own reflected places. You might think of them as their own dimensions. Things that occur in one dimension may not occur in another, but may be reflected further into that dimension. That there's an image. Oh, imagine holding up a mirror up against another mirror, and they reflect back and forth. Right? Image where the image is in the reflection does not always occur or continue beyond the image in the other mirror. It may continue elsewhere. Time does not move the same in all those places. But if you are holding the mirrors, it is all the same to you. In part is a question of perspective of the viewer, and he talks about, imagine a black hole. Your perspective of you falling into a black hole is different than the perspective of someone watching you fall into the black hole. In any given shadow, it is has its own perspective. Unless you are at an origin point, you would not know the difference there. You would not notice the difference. There's no point of reference for it. Is there a place where you can go? Wes asks, is there a place where you can go to choose to look into different shadows? Because Wes has Dylan on the mind is thinking of some stuff. He says yes. And yes, you have been there. That's what Sam says. You have walked the thread. The end point of the thread is a singularity and is a single against all places. And he says, just to be clear, it was not the ancients who first discovered it, more like created it. We ask, well, who? He says, that is an interesting question, but a bit of a distraction. And he brings, okay, if there is a shadow that is an influence on this world, this is West. If there's a shadow that is in influence on this world at this time, what would be the best thing for us to do to combat it or its influences? Sam listens to his left, and he says, but we were just getting to the good part. He says, oh, okay, and then he vanishes. Just like that original Star Trek episode with the guy in the mirror and his parents. So we pitch camp. We spent a couple of days searching for the dwarven outpost, not getting anywhere, when we spot a horde of orcs coming down from the pass. So we back off and we hide, but we know one group of this horde notices where we were. They send a runner to the southeast. The rest of them move east to a thicket. They're spying on us, right? They're being wary, looking around, but they're kind of keeping where we were in sight. Okay, so we sneak off to the north. We travel for a couple of miles. Eventually, a group of 11 with heavy arms and armor we spot following our trail. So we move around and set up an ambush. And there's a side discussion on combat training, because there's this skill in Far Right called combat training that does three things. It gives you apparently a modifier and a particular category of weapons that you choose to specialize in. Allows you to teach that category of weapons up to your combat training skill level. And third, gives you a percentage modifier against the combat skill of your opponent with all weapons. Now the whole combat training thing is team tactics, is what it is. Working as a fire team or whatever. So you're working together with other people and you know how to work with each other and you know each other's moves and stuff like that. So you get a modifier. Okay. Okay, so we ambushed the 7. Wes throws out sleep. A bunch of them went down. He tried a second sleep, got 1 or 2 more, and then he takes off because there's a big group of armored guys and there's 3 scouts essentially that are actually on the trail. These other guys are kind of following off to the side, trying to do an ambush thing, right? And then Wes takes over to the other 3, does a sleep, gets 1 of them. Meanwhile, Emerald is stinging them and puts 2 of them down. On the other side, everybody else runs in, attacks. and one of the guys, there's a handful of goblins and a bunch of orcs. One of the orcs, when everybody's pretty much down, takes off. Hjalmar chases after him. Wes sends Emerald to chase after him. Now, Emerald's going to be able to keep up with him. Wes may not be able to. Eventually, Wes will slow down. Not Wes. Hjalmar will slow down because of the endurance factor, right? So we do some chase rolls, right? And Emerald tries to do a sting, so he knows she's around. So now she's got to get a special or a crit in order to get past the armor to do any damage to him, right? But now that he knows she's there, he takes a swipe at her, so she's backing off. She's just going to hover in place, watching over him. He decides to start running again. Eventually, though, we do, because Wes is using on his familiar mastery list, he's got locate familiar kind of thing, so he's boosting that so he's got some distance, so he can keep trying to track in on her. But he's not really good with those spells yet, so he loses her a few times and eventually get her back. But eventually we all catch up to him, and we do sleep on him, right? Oh, got to him, cast sleep, but he made his saving throw, so it didn't work. But Emerald zooms down and crits him, and so he goes down. So Raymond also followed along. We take the body back. Runt, meanwhile, has been finishing off all the sleeping orcs, rummaging through their bodies and piling them up. They have coins from Molag, which is an even eviler city further south on the east coast. So we, instead of going south to where we were to try to cut through to get the dwarven outpost, we're going to go northwest into the foothills and come around from the other side. Next day is uneventful. Day after that, we're camping in the evening. Both Runt and Wes, we see a glow of campfires on the slope on the far side of the pass. So Wes sends Emerald up. There's lots of campfires on the far side. Oh, great. So, okay, we're going to head to Hamlet now. We've got to let somebody know something's going on. So we head north for a couple days. The horde that we had come across initially is camped on the far side of the bridge. So we follow the river till we get to a fording point, come across, we take up from the west, come around so we can bypass them and get to Hamlet. Okay. The militia is active and they're putting barricades up. One of Kirk's rangers told the village about the horde, and then he went on to Telgar. The horde arrived 3 days ahead of us, but they're waiting outside of Hamlet for something. So we go to a village council. What can we do? What can we do? What can you do? That kind of stuff, right? So as a party, we discuss using the gate to bring forces from the Undersea Temple to help with the defenses and possibly as an escape route. Hjalmar in the church prays to Sylvanus, asking if he needs to take care of the helpless with his own hands here in Hamlet. And this is vision. The mailed fist and a flaming sword, which are the symbols of Sylvanus. They come crashing down on this smoking goblin visage kind of thing, right? So when when Hjalmar gets a chance, he speaks to Wes about his prayer and his vision. So Raymond and Wes go to the Undersea Temple to gather up the forces. We coordinate communication with the temple, or for them to channel power to us for the fight. And everybody's pretty ready to go now, so we just take everybody with us. So there's some concern about all these people all of a sudden showing up in the church that, have technically never been here before, that kind of thing, right? Okay, so not meanwhile, but later that night, Emerald and Wes are making periodic checks of the surrounding areas. So he's going to send Emerald up 2,000 feet. That's the max of his extended range he can do. He does sense sharing with her. It'll last for 10 minutes. So she's looking around, so is Wes. They're looking around. That takes 4 magic points, which will take him 7 hours to recover. But there are 2 other armies to the east. One right to the east, one to the northeast, plus we have the other one. The horde of orcs, and then 2 armies of men. And then there's a side tangent discussion of black powder, smokeless powder, the ability to create it. Let's make some gunpowder. Let's make a cannon, fire it, or something like that thing. So there's some discussion going like that in the live play. But that's what we call it for the night. Happy gaming.